Today we're going to discuss the rising price in uranium. We hit $50 plus today, the $51 ask in uranium. We're also going to talk about the overfeeding, which is going to be happening. I'm going to show you some charts from 2010 and today that I made for you guys. And it's really interesting. It's going to get really crazy very soon in the uranium markets. The overall market was down today, especially in energy. So it did bring a lot of all the uranium stocks down. Remember, we're such a small sector, but I made you guys this chart. So in 2010, this is tons of uranium, and these were the producers, primary supply. And then this is the secondary supply. This was 2010. Okay. And this was where the demand was at, over 180 million pounds. And now we're over about 200 million pounds. Okay. And one of the big things with the past to now is you can see Kazatomprom is really one of the main reasons you got that low cost producer, and they're one of the biggest producers, the biggest out there, right? You know, Cameco can produce a good amount, but they're not. If you look at the chart here, this is what I made. This is this year. Now you can see a lot of these companies, they're not even producing anymore. It's just insane. The production's really just shifted. And this supply from not only Russia, but Kazatomprom is still at risk in the future. Okay. Now this chart I also put on here, the Sput Physical Uranium Trust. This is how many pounds, this is how many tons they moved. 38 million pounds they bought out of the spot market, in the spot market. And this is year 2021, just last year. So this is not going into 2022, but you can see how much it is. And, this just shows what type of animal the Sput Physical Uranium Trust is. Now, one of the big things, really what led to prices being low was this secondary supply market in uranium. And what has happened through the years is, it's dwindled down and, we've seen less production. So there's obviously a lot less now. Now we're starting to see this demand into next year go down. And this will be because of overfeeding. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Honeywell is going to be restarting their facility next year. I'll show you the news article on that. And they're going to be likely shifting all of that secondary supply out of the market. And there's also the fact that Russia, all this underfeeding, everything is pretty much at risk. A lot of the analysts out there are still saying that this could be still in the market, but we know this is very, very likely to not be there in the future, especially with how Russia is continuing to stay there in Ukraine. And we know that the market's very fragile, and you can see that just the demand outweighs everything. Now you knock out this secondary supply really filled this extra demand, right? And they filled long-term contracts, obviously, into the future. But per year of Sput Physical Uranium Trust, Honeywell really shifts this secondary supply. I really do think that you're going to start to see a lot of buying, obviously, in the U308 market, the long-term and the spot market as well. Now, this idled conversion plant, this is what we're talking about with Honeywell. They will be preparing to restart there in 2023. They're already been hiring, I've been seeing. And the thing is, them at full production next year, as well as Orano, their conversion facility there in France. This is the Philippe Coste plant, and this plant being at full capacity, 15,000 tons by next year. So both of these will need uranium, U308. So it is very likely that we see a lot of big buying coming in. And another thing I didn't really add on this chart, but it's going to be alarming. In the next few years, Kazakhstan looks to store, it's around 26,000 tons. So a whole, pretty much, and by the time it gets to 2026, they said in their presentation that it's roughly double that. So the annual attributable production is what they said right here. So this is obviously China is going to be wanting, this is really for those 150 future reactors. So you have that as well. And just a visual, just so you can see, that's the demand. We got 700 million pounds contracting going to be coming back. This is the yearly demand, right? And then you've got all of the secondary supply going to be wiped out. A lot of this supply could be shifting over to China, right? And then Sput Physical Uranium Trust, look at how much they took out of the market. like this. I mean, it's many countries, right, that they just, pulled out of the market. And this is really why uranium price is going to start to go up very soon. Now, this in 2010, the spot market then in December, inflation adjusted, was about $81. They had this little renaissance starting to go in the uranium sector they hadn't seen in multiple years. And then Fukushima happened. And then there was a lot of long-term contracting happening during this time. But because of Fukushima, the prices started to go down. And they contracted again, and then now we're looking at 10 years later after Fukushima. Many of these contracts, have already went up. We've seen producers, smaller producers, developers start to secure these contracts later on that want to get into production. Very small amount, not even showing up here on the graph really. But you can see the demand is coming. Both of these, what we call overfeeding, they're going to be using U3O8 because they're going to be at full capacity. And this is just one way, and you've seen it all over the uranium talking heads. You got Kevin Bambro. The industry is set to go from underfeeding to overfeeding, and this will result in a significant drop in secondary supply. The world is likely to avoid Russian enrichment services as much as possible. This is very significant, complicated to explain, but 100% valid. Now, a lot of people have explained it pretty well. John Quakes has explained it. Evan B is saying that he thinks that 200 could test this year. John Quakes also has been saying the same thing. Overfeeding comes in. Enrichers in the West can increase their production of enriched uranium by overfeeding the centrifuges, thus making up for the lost capacity from Russia. So overfeeding requires the enrichers to buy extra mined U3O8 to be converted into UF6. And we saw these prices have gone up. U3O8 has gone down somewhat. Tell Sprott Physical Uranium Trust not buying as much. But I think this is, possibly just the traders really lowballing that price. This massive producer, a lot of this stuff is going to be shifting to China. And I want to let you guys know, in the 1970s, one of the main reasons we had a uranium rise to all-time highs was because there was embargo on uranium to the US. Australia wasn't shipping it out. And then France, near the mid part of the 70s, said they were going to dump a bunch of low-priced uranium, aka Kazatomprom, kind of how they were. And then they just stopped in their tracks. They stopped. They said they're not going to export any uranium at all because of their future plans for nuclear. Now look at this. Kazatomprom, very close with China, right? I think that a lot of this production is going to be going to China. And it's not just the 26 million pounds that they're going to be wanting to store, this trade facility, which is open to everyone really. It's really going to be a lot of the other 50% of their mining, I think, is really in the future going to be going to China. Now, China's already got a lot of joint ventures with them and all of this, but you're going to see, it's really crazy. You look at this, you're going to see this massive orange out of here. You're going to see this amount removed probably per year by Sput. So that knocks off another amount, at least Cameco, right? And then you got this overfeeding. It's going to knock out the Russia stuff could be gone. The overfeeding starting to come in. They're going to be knocking out more uranium. So how much spot is left out there? That's really the question. How much spot uranium? And because it is such an opaque market, this stuff takes time. It is very nice to see a visual like this, see what the demand is. And remember that 700 million pounds of contracting will be coming back, okay? This is a good thread by John Quakes about underfeeding. He's like, what the heck is underfeeding? As a uranium investor, why should I care? And this is the thread. He said, let's use freeze-dried instant coffee in place of enriched nuclear fuel. So the EUP, where utilities are coffee buyers and uranium miners are growers. So the converters are the roasters and grinders, and enrichers are factories where ground coffee is turned into packaged instant coffee. Okay. And then he goes on to say that coffee growers, those are the U3O8 miners, dries and bags coffee beans, which is the yellow cake, to be stored in warehouses until a coffee buyer either buys a few bags on the spot market or negotiates a long-term contract for so many bags per year. So coffee buyers sends bags to be roasted and ground up. He goes on to say a converter, roasters and grinders, they grind the coffee bean into enriched factory-fed UF6, which the coffee buyers sends to the enrichers to process into packaged freeze-dried instant coffee or nuclear fuel. that will be turned into coffee pods for their fleet of coffee shops. I love this. Quakes is very good at explaining this. So the coffee buyer negotiates with enrichers for how much instant coffee to produce and how many hours of SWUs that will cost to achieve the desired strength, and how much ground coffee the UF6 will be needed. So contracts signed and coffee buyers ship feeds the UF6 from converters. Okay, let me go on. The thing about the factory is it can't be shut down. Must keep running constantly. With few customers, low nuclear demand, it isn't busy, so owners come up with a plan. Instead of using all the coffee provided by clients, they'll use less underfed and brew it longer. They can achieve contracted strength for final product by using less coffee to do that. Then, to recover cost of extra hours SWU of brewing, they sell the unused coffee feed on the spot to other coffee buyers, competing with growers by producing secondary supply. Just to make it even more complicated, the weak leftover tails produced when making instant coffee can be also stored and recycled back into the factory process, further reducing amount of coffee needed for enrichment, reducing uranium demand from growers even more. Okay, so that's not that part's not happening anymore. It's the opposite. They're coming back. They're going to need uranium. So what happens now? We see coffee buyers open more coffee shops, nuclear reactors, which we've seen 150 coming just from China, and demand for coffee beans, uranium, is rising. You need the uranium. It's the first thing. It's coffee bean. And competitors expand their operation as well on rising coffee demand around the world. There's now a lineup at factory of buyers wanting enrichment. So the factory can now charge more per hour, higher SWU, and each batch can be enriched faster by using all feed UF6 provided by client. Brewed for shorter time to achieve desired strength. No more unused feed to sell. If enrichers signed lots of contracts but still can't keep up with the rising demand, they can further reduce brewing time by feeding more coffee than clients provided. Overfeeding. That's what we're going to see. Buying additional feed themselves on the spot, flipping from seller to buyer of spot coffee. Obviously, we know what coffee is. Secondary supply has switched to secondary demand. Okay, and we've seen this. This is what's happening. Coffee growers are jacking up spot and contract prices as oversupply has rapidly turned into major supply deficit, with coffee buyers and enrichers needing coffee feed for enrichment factories. Coffee prices skyrocket, aka uranium prices skyrocket. But wait, coffee growers were losing money from low prices as they cut production and got rid of 20% of their trees. It will take years to grow production, creating a major shortage of many years as demand keeps rising. A bull market is born. Uranium prices to the moon. We have less supply coming in. We have a bigger demand coming in. And the secondary supply is about to turn into, we're really going to see that overfeeding start, as we know. And they're going to be buying up more uranium. And that was a great way John Quakes showed this. Now, what's really cool, if you check here, I've been following uranium for multiple years. So you can actually search anything, secondary supply. And you can see there are 123 posts just on secondary supply. And that's how I find a lot of this stuff, because there's so much data. I get things automatically sent here by bots. And this is, years and years of data, for the past 3 years now. And there's 100,000 plus uranium posts in general. So you can search all this stuff. You can search up Honeywell. You can see how many times Honeywell has been posted in here. Obviously, I've just been posting about that not too long ago. And then secondary supply, you can see, I didn't go through this all the way, but you can see just how many times it's been talked about. But it is nice to be able to use this great thing in the Discord for years of data. So if you guys want access to that, it's actually in the link in the description below. Two other things we'll follow up in this video is the overall market today. It looks like trash, right? We opened up, energy sector just dumped like crazy. Uranium, everything is down. Look at SMR, it's down like 10%. That stock's going to be, unfortunately, that stock's going to see a lot of issues in a recession. It's very tough to be a SPAC in a recession. Today, LEU also was sold down 5% as well. This company's making like $300 million almost last year, and that's near what the market cap is. So there is really good deals out there. That is one thing that's happening. But you can see the energy minerals were down a lot. We look over, and of course, a lot of the oils, a lot of those things were down today, and they're still down for the month. But uranium is going up, and we know exactly why. I just explained why uranium is going up. And remember the fuel cycle towards spring and fall, which we're about to see. Now, if we look at the price of uranium, this is always going to be a little bit delayed. They'll take it tomorrow. So it'll be in the 50s, right? It'll be down here getting close to this to form this new pennant here. So the higher we get up, the better. I really do think $55. Now, the one thing about this, that we know that every time it runs, it's in the spring. And I've been saying this, and I want to get it in everyone's head. Look at this. Look at the massive running. March. Oh, look, March and April. Look at this. August, September, October. Boom. What is this? April. Okay. So we see the biggest runs coming when the fuel cycling is happening and the plants in the US are shut down. And remember who were the buyers in a lot of this market. Okay. Who are the buyers in a lot of the spot market? And it is, producers, utilities during that time. And now the processors, they're going to be coming back into the spot market. So it's going to be a lot tighter. Sprott Physical Uranium Trust also buys the most during these times. So I think we're in a good shape. I've been heavy cash, and you guys have known this. And now you guys, I've kind of like let it out of the bag when I'm going to be selling my uranium stocks. And it's usually in the spring and fall. Last, September, when we saw this massive run up, that's when I sold. I also sold all my uranium stocks the very beginning of April, and people are like, why? We were still going up just a little in spot. And I was like, the main reason the overall market, I believed, was going to correct. And we saw a 50% plus drawdown in a lot of uranium stocks since just this little bit of time. But I am still looking to establish these long-term positions. I do have some already that I've started, especially US producers around here. I think it's a very big opportunity for them to come back and really establish this US uranium renaissance again that we saw in the 60s and 70s, which were record highs. And I mean, if any of that comes back to the US producers, if any of that, those millions and millions of pounds, if we can get that in the next few years, these companies can grow massive. Okay. And you just got to look back at history and say, what happened? And inflation adjusted prices for a lot of these analysts, they're still doing prices that were back in 2014. The prices that some of them think that these mines can get up at, the prices, they were still at these prices way back at this time. The prices that these companies are going to need to get back into production, a lot of these, especially the smaller ones, it's going to be a lot higher. Now, if you have government support, US production, there is a lot of support the government could do for US producers. And that's why it's a real big one on my chart right now that I want to add to. So it's getting exciting to see the spot price somewhat go up with the uranium stocks prices still down, because I really do think that the farther that price gets up, that it's going to just be at a massive explosion overnight. And I love that the overall market is down. I think it's going to be a little bit healthier. With this new uranium documentary that's touching on the recession that we're possibly going in, I'm touching on all that. It's going to be a long process. So these prices are going to have to go up. And if you look back to the 70s, that was another reason that the prices went to all-time highs. We had inflation, and the price to mine uranium in the US continued to go up. So the prices went up, and the US government actually wanted the prices to go up. The Nixon administration actually said, but it's going to be very exciting to see these prices go up, and then the market to finally see this, because when you see uranium stocks do a massive jump up and the overall market is down, it's going to get a lot of publicity. And yes, they're probably going to spike up, and I probably will sell some, but I'm looking to ride these waves. I don't want to be a fat guy just on the beach. Okay. I want to be out there surfing this. And that's what I do with day trading and swing trading uranium stocks. And that is how I have been able to trade in the market for a decade. Okay. And I don't marry a stock. I love uranium, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to take profits, and I'm able to buy back. And as things change, like companies in the US, as this renaissance starts, I'm looking to buy into those companies. So this whole uranium bull market has changed in the last couple months. And really, I'm looking towards these US producers And this overfeeding, what is it going to do to the spot market? The spot market does matter. The spot market really does matter, especially when you have massive buyers come in. The processors, Sprott Physical Uranium Trust, it will matter in a time of desperation when utilities are starting to see that price go up and they haven't contracted yet. It does matter. So I've seen people out there say that it doesn't matter. Yes, long-term contracts are where it's really at. That's where things are going to stabilize. That's where it's going to raise everything up in the long run once those prices are established and those 700 million pounds comes back into the market. We're about to see a big run in uranium, and I think it's going to be by October this fall, maybe late fall. This is just a probability. I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know exactly when these things are going to happen, but if you look at my track record, things have been pretty on key. I usually am able to find bottoms, and I am usually early. So yes, uranium stocks have pulled back, but it's a perfect time, in my opinion, for me to look to get into these longer term, because I think the price of uranium are going to go up, and I don't think they're going to come back much down from where they're going to be once they hit that 70 plus mark. So if you guys are ready for that uranium documentary video, I know a lot of you are, you got to hit the like down below. We got to get the likes up on these videos a lot more, but I'm going to be releasing it very, very soon. I'm really excited. I've been pulling pretty late nights trying to get it done. So thanks again for the support. You want to see what I'm buying and trading in uranium? There's a link in the description below if you want to do research on uranium. Hundreds of thousands of posts in my Discord. Great knowledgeable people in there. People who've been trading for decades as well, that know the uranium market as well. They're in there. So hit the like and subscribe button below, and Semper Paratus.